All right, guys, I'm going to get started here. Thank you so much for joining today. As you know, this is a RezStream Cloud PMS usability webinar. The goal of these monthly webinars is to share feedback that I receive both in speaking with clients and from the support staff on the usability of the program, and to try and do my best to ensure that you guys are familiar with the program and how it functions and maybe different ways to do things than what you're currently doing. So I pay a good attention to how people interact with the reservation software in an attempt to try and help increase your knowledge of how the program was designed and kind of how to do things. So today I'm going to be covering some things that have come up quite frequently here over a good portion of our clients' busy season. Want to make sure that you guys are familiar with some of these day-to-day operations, so I think that's important. But before I kind of dive in here, a couple things I want to talk about. If you guys have ideas or comments or general feedback about the program, you know, we're a company that's open ears, so you're not going to hurt our feelings. The whole point of this reservation software is to streamline your efficiency, make your life easier. So if there's anything that we're missing the boat on or anything that can be improved upon, please feel free to email or give me a call. Love to hear that. Also, starting last month, we created a user forum, which is a little bit different than these usability webinars in the sense that when Jeff runs those user forums, he opens up the conversation. So you can ask questions, you can hear from your peers, other users using the cloud software. So I think it's a really good thing that takes place there so that you can be a little bit more interactive with other users of the program. So here's the link for that. So that happens on the second Tuesday of every month. So go ahead and get signed up for that if you haven't already. And then the other thing I wanted to start with here is we're currently testing, which means that our next release will include the auto merging of booking engine guests. So what specifically does that mean? As I'm sure you've all experienced, if you've got a repeat guest that comes in and makes a reservation on the booking engine, what happens is that the system duplicates that guest record. So even though they've already been there before, it's basically creating a brand new record that you then have to go in and manually merge. So what this release will include is the auto merging of that guest record based on multiple different variables or checkpoints that the system is going to go through for that guest, whether it's tied to their name, address, phone number, email, etc. So that should be exciting, and look for that release here at some point this month. Okay, first thing I want to cover with you guys here today is moving or removing of dashboard widgets. So as you all are at this point hopefully familiar with your dashboard, which is the first icon in the navigation, you have the ability to control which order these widgets display in. So a widget here is anything that's kind of boxed or categorized. So you've got reservations, key items, shared notes, recent reservations, and so on. So in the upper right-hand corner, by clicking on that dashboard setting, you can now click and drag and move these widgets around. You can move them to the opposite side. Wherever you want to put those widgets, you can do so. And then also, if there's a widget that you don't want to see at all because you don't use it, so as an example, if you're not taking advantage of our task widget on the dashboard, you can hide that widget. Make sure once you're done, you always save your settings in the upper right-hand corner. And then now that task widget has been removed from the right-hand side. So, you know, I log into almost everyone's database periodically each and every month, and I kind of get a sense for how people have these things laid out. I see a lot of people not using some of these dashboard widgets, so I'm not sure if you guys are familiar that you can hide those, but if you're not using something, key items, tasks, shared notes, what have you, you can hide them and create more space here on your dashboard. Now, keep in mind, All the dashboard settings, just like the occupancy settings, are database wide. So it's not individual user specific. So if you got 3 different users, you can't save something for yourself versus the next front desk rep or owner, innkeeper, what have you. So just keep in mind that that's database wide, okay? Okay, second thing I want to cover with you guys today in trying to get through this in 30 minutes and respect everyone's time is I want to talk about adding a unit to an existing reservation. Or so in essence, as an example here, someone has called in and made a reservation. Let's say it's John Doe here. And John Doe has called back and he needs to add a second unit, okay? So what's some practical examples? You know, let's say it wasn't originally a group booking, but John Doe has talked his best friend and spouse to come in and come out and stay, and they want to basically be on the same invoice. They just want to add a second unit, or adding family members, what have you. They just need more space, okay? So when that doesn't happen originally, and you're not creating a group reservation, the way that we're going to be adding a unit is we go to the reservation in question here on our dashboard, and we've added this little fancy button over here, which is an add unit button. So you have to first highlight the person calling or that initial reservation or unit, right? And then you get this open dialog box. And then we have the ability to add a unit here. And in clicking on this button, it's now telling us to make our selection on the occupancy map. So what it's saying is go ahead and click and drag now. So you make sure that you have the appropriate room in question. You click and drag the appropriate number of nights. And then what it's doing here is it's basically combining it with the original reservation that you selected here, right? So you see that it's combining it with John Doe. So as I book this unit here, you'll now notice that it takes me into my reservation detail page where I've got my original guest, John Doe, and now in addition to his original unit, the Suite of Dreams, we've now added the Vineyard on there for another 2 nights, and it's now updated all the invoice items for the Suite of Dreams and the Vineyard and the appropriate pricing and taxes, okay? So very easy and convenient and practical way to add a unit onto an existing reservation. As I come back here to the occupancy map, you see that I have both of those John Doe reservations, and by clicking on either one of these things here, it's going to highlight both of them because it's now joined on to the same reservation, if you will, okay? So I think that's a pretty easy and convenient way of going through and taking care of adding a specific unit onto a reservation. Okay, so that's the second thing I want to cover with you today. The next thing I want to cover, guys, that happens all the time is I want to talk about moving reservations, right? So I want to move a reservation. So there's a couple different ways that you can do that, and I want to give you both examples here. So you'll notice on my particular occupancy map, I have my width and height settings for my cells to be pretty large here, right? So I'm only getting to see about a couple weeks worth of data here. So if I need to move a reservation, I'm going to take this one here. If you'll notice here, guys, pay attention to my mouse. So right now, look at my mouse. As I start moving around this reservation field, the cursor is going to change to a different icon or character, if you will. So if I get over here on the right-hand side, I've got 2 arrows, which allows me to grab that reservation and lengthen it or shorten it, right? But if I come up here in the upper right-hand corner of a reservation, I get 4 arrow icon. And basically what this icon is indicating is that I can hold down the left mouse button and I can go ahead and I can click and drag this reservation anywhere that I want to. And you see that when I'm doing that, you see that it's got the 2 nights of that reservation in a darker gray shading, if you will. So it's letting me know that I've clicked it and I've got it on the hook and I'm dragging that puppy around, right? Well, as I'm sure you guys have experienced, If I click and drag it and I just need to move it somewhere else because the days change or the unit change, not a big deal, right? As long as it's within my display. And once I release that, it then pops me up with the move reservation screen here, and it's saying, hey, do you want to keep the current rate that you already had on that reservation? And the reason why it's asking that is maybe a toilet went out and I had to move them, so I don't want to charge them more money, right? Or do I want to update that rate? Maybe they've got a room upgrade that they want to have happen based on choice, right? Not a necessity. So after you make that selection, then it goes ahead and it updates the occupancy map here, and it's actually moved that reservation. So pretty self-explanatory, right? Those of you from RezStream Professional know how to do that. Those of you who've been using the cloud, you know how to do that, right? Well, here's where it gets kind of goofy using this first method of moving a reservation around. If I take the same example, but I need to take this reservation and I need to move it into the future, right? Well, it gets a little bit goofy, and let me show you what I mean, and I'm sure some of you have experienced this. So I'm going to grab this bad boy and I'm going to start moving it into the future. Well, if I move it a couple days, not a big deal. If I move it a week, not a big deal. But let's say I got to move this bad boy out a month or so. Look how annoying and tedious this thing is to move that reservation, right? Because what's happening is that while I'm clicking and dragging and moving that reservation along, what's happening is that it's got to update the occupancy map one thing at a time, and it gets real goofy there. So you see how the system maybe doesn't respond as well when you're moving something for a long period of time, right? So the second way in which you can move a reservation around is by clicking on that specific reservation in question. We've added this little button down here that allows you to move this reservation. And in this second option here, where you want to use this as a practical use is when you need to move a reservation well into the future and you don't want to deal with that kind of clunkiness of moving a reservation to a different month down the road, or you've got a lot of occupancy going on, a lot of reservations going on. So by clicking this move button, this move reservation dialog that now pops up here it's going to allow me to actually select my date, and if for whatever reason I need to move that specific reservation to a different unit, I have the ability to do so, right, as well as change the link. So from this little drop down, this icon pops up to the calendar. It's very easy for me to go out well into the future and select the dates that I want to have that reservation go to. And you'll notice here, it's summarizing what's happening. So I'm taking this particular guest and I'm moving it from the Suite of Dreams, and I'm keeping it in the same unit, but I'm moving it from October 9th through the 11th out to 2018 here in January. So it's just confirming everything that's taking place. And when I hit this continue button, I then now get the option to keep the current rate that it was at or update that rate. So after I make that selection there, it goes ahead and handles that for me. So if I were to now jump out into the future here, into January, I now see that reservation that I moved. So again, to recap here, guys, you've got a couple different options, right? You can either, in the upper right-hand corner of a reservation, you can click and drag, and in using that option, if it's within the occupancy map display that you see, it's very easy to do. It's very convenient to make that choice, right? But if I'm going to actually be taking that reservation and I'm going to be, in essence, moving it well into the future and I don't want to deal with any clunkiness, then the second option here is to click on that reservation and click this move button. So hopefully that helps y'all out there that are going between those different options or those different needs at any point in time, whether it's busy season or off season. I think the last thing to note on that topic is that if you try and move a reservation into a existing unit that already has a reservation there, it will come up with a little message letting you know, hey, hold on a second here. You're trying to take a reservation for 2 nights and you're trying to fit it into somewhere that we've already got a reservation there. So I think we do a good job of noting that right there on the occupancy map and letting you deal with it. Okay, So that's the widgets on the dashboard. That's adding a unit to a reservation. We just covered moving the reservation itself. Now, the fourth thing out of 5 things that I want to cover with you guys here today is rebooking, okay? So we're talking about rebooking a reservation. So what exactly does that mean? Well, you've got repeat guests. I'm assuming you all have experienced repeat guests before, and those repeat guests tend to come back the same time each and every year. Now, this may apply more for some and less for others, but I think this is a very, very nice feature here for those of you with high repeat guests. And in our experiences, most smaller independent properties have a good number of repeat guests here. So I'm going to take you through a practical example. So I'm going to jump back here to my dashboard, and let's say we've got a departure. So Mr. Pete Peoples, say that fast 5 times. That's a tongue twister. Mr. Pete Peoples here is departing today, and I want to basically find out if this repeat guest would like to come back and stay with me next year. So that's something that you guys can work in. You guys know your businesses better than I, obviously. So if that's something that you do every single reservation, that's great. If that's something that you do only for people that you know are repeat guests, you guys in smaller properties get very intimate with your guests and you know them very well, so you kind of have a good understanding of when this conversation should be coming up. But as it relates for this example, on this departure here, as I click on Pete Peoples, I'm going to check him out, and I'm going to go through this checkout wizard here. So once I've highlighted Pete here, I get all these different options, and I'm going to check him out. Well, something that I want you to pay attention here on this checkout wizard is you have the ability to toggle a rebook for next year, okay? So something to pay attention to. Right now, by default, I have this turned off, okay? Which means that it doesn't come up with every checkout I do. Now, you've got a couple different options here. If you want this setting to come up every single time you go through this checkout wizard, you would click this on and then hit this link right here, which is saying always use these checkout options. So in essence, by turning this on and clicking this button, I am saving that default setting that I want to every single time I go through a checkout wizard, I want the option to rebook a person for next year. Now, that may not be practical for most of you, which is why I have this toggled off as my default setting of my checkout wizard. And as I go through the checkout, if I want to ask this person, hey, are you going to come back same time next year? If they say yes, then I'm going to turn this thing on, and I'm going to continue with my checkout. And it's going to prompt me to rebook this reservation for Mr. Pete Peoples, okay? Now, what the system automatically does here is it takes that reservation and that guest, and it makes the assumption that they're going to come back on the same time frame in the same unit 1 year from now, okay? So the assumption here within this rebooking feature is same person, same unit, same time frame. Now, what you're going to notice here is that in 2017, Monday and Tuesday falls on the 2nd and 3rd of October, but 1 year from now, Monday and Tuesday falls on the 1st and 2nd, right? Because as we go into the next year, the days of the week and actual dates that they fall on change, so the system accounts for that, okay? So that is the default assumption here, right? Now, what you'll notice on the screen here is you've got various different options. If they want to come back sooner or later than exactly 1 year from their reservation this time around, you can click on these calendar icons and you can pick whatever date range it is that you want, right? You can pick what other length of stay you want, as well as you can pick any units here in your system. But the benefit of this is that it's taking that same guest record here. So as an example, guys, if you did not use this rebooking feature at checkout for someone that wants to basically book another stay with you, you've got to make your way back to the occupancy map. You got to click and drag on the particular unit and time frame that they want to stay. You've got to repick people's from your select contact screen and navigate through that reservation, right? So by using this rebooking feature, it's skipping several of those steps in that reservation process because as people are checking out here, you want to streamline that efficiency. You want to go through that checkout wizard, and you just want to make it a smooth process for not only you, but for that guest, right? So I think what's very convenient about this rebooking feature is it allows it to efficiently streamline that process, as well as, in addition to making some assumptions here that they're going to come same time, same unit 1 year from now, you have the ability on the fly to change the dates and change the unit. So I think that's a very convenient way and something that not a lot of people that I've spoken with are taking advantage of in the system for those of you that have high repeat guests, okay? Now, I want to show you basically the same thing, but from a different section within the program. What I found in my experiences with our clients is a good portion of people love to work off this dashboard. It's what they're familiar with. That's what they like to do. That's what they've adapted to in the cloud. However, you still got some people in the system here, and these people, they want to work off the occupancy map or the tape chart, as some people refer to it as. And that's certainly fine, no problem here. So I'm just going to jump out to that reservation that I had moved earlier. I think it was on the 8th. And I'm going to show you an example here. So let's say that you work off the occupancy map, and this is how you indicate if you need to take payments from people or people are coming and going. If I click on the reservation here, guys, again, from this little dialog box, I now, in addition to adding units and moving unit, I also have the ability to rebook this reservation. So once I've highlighted the reservation that I'm working on, if I hit this rebook button, I'm immediately taken to that screen that I just went through with you guys, where it's automatically making some assumptions here that this Mr. Test 1 is going to come 1 year from now, again, Monday through Wednesday, again in the Suite of Dreams. And if need be, I can make some adjustments here to this reservations and continue and make a new reservation form. So to recap, the rebooking feature is used for those of you with repeat guests, for people that are coming back. If it's me and in my business, I'm training my staff upon checkout to ask all my guests if they'd like to make another reservation for the future. That's just something that you should get into. Let's not assume that they'll reach back out to us. They're going to come 1 year from now. Let's encourage them to come back more frequently. So as part of my repertoire on checkout, I'm going to ask people if they'd like to make another reservation or rebook a reservation. So that's just a general practice that I would do. And again, you can rebook either from the dashboard as we've walked through, or you can rebook from the occupancy map, okay? So that's pretty good stuff. Okay. The last thing I want to cover with you guys today here, I got about 6 more minutes, so I should be able to get out in 30 minutes here, is I want to cover individual unit calendars on the online booking engine, okay? So where this applies is to those of you that return your rooms by individual units, okay? So what that means for those of you unfamiliar is each of your units are unique. So you don't have many of one. So think of it as a hotel. A hotel returns by type. They have many of one. They have 10 king rooms. They have 8 queen bed rooms, right? They have 7 suites with jacuzzi tub rooms. They have many of one. So for those of you that have individual units, we have the ability to take advantage or provide a better guest experience for the online booking engine. So let me show you what I mean by that. The first thing I'm going to show you is how most of you, using individual room assignments, have your online booking engine set up on your website. Now, keep in mind, the online booking engine, it's the best damn employee you're ever going to have, right? It costs very little. It never gets sick, it never sleeps, it never needs time off work, it works 24/7. So the booking engine, as I like to say, is the best employee you're ever going to have. So follow along with me here. How most of you have your booking engine set up today is you come to your reservations page, you enter your dates here, and you hit this next button. This is what your guest is experiencing, right? And then the next thing you know, they get a list of all the rooms that are available for the particular date range, and then they have to select the room that they want, right? Well, guests navigating through your website oftentimes go through a different experience here. So let me use some practical examples. They find your website through the search engines, or maybe they've heard of you word of mouth, right? And then they come to your website. Well, what they want to do is they want to see what type of rooms that you have available. And on your website, you've got spacious rooms and medium rooms, small rooms, garden cottage, whatever it is that you have. And so they're going through these lists of rooms here, and they realize, okay, well, let me jump in here and let me look at room 11, and let me look at room 21, and then I want to look at room 10. Well, in looking at room 10 and seeing all the special features here and reading about it and looking at the room photos, I've fallen in love with room 10, okay? I know as a consumer that after having gone through your website and going through the buying journey and seeing all the different lodging accommodation rooms that you have to offer, I know that I've narrowed down my search to room 10, right? Okay. Well, what most of you are doing on your website is you're taking that guest and you're saying, okay, well, book now because you've fallen in love and you're ready to book, and they're going into the booking engine where they now see all of your lodging accommodations based on the dates that you've entered, whereas in reality they've fallen in love with room 10, and what you're doing in that buying journey is you've got them to a point where they've fallen in love and they're ready to spend their money, and now you're just dumping them into the booking engine and having them have to navigate and find room 10 all over again, right? It's a bad experience in that buying journey when someone's ready to give you their credit card data, okay? So this is where individual unit calendars come into play. So what you should be doing is once they get down to this room details page and you're talking all about room 10 and how wonderful it is and look at all the pictures and you've fallen in love, you're ready to buy, well, our booking engine, which is very unique in the industry for booking engine providers, we have the ability to show and display individual unit calendars, okay? So this calendar that you're seeing right here has special coding on the back end that is associated to room 10 only, and it's pulling this availability from your cloud PMS directly, okay? So I've fallen in love with room 10, and now I want to see specifically when room 10 is available because I'm ready to make a purchase decision. And you'll notice here on my calendar that anything highlighted in white is not available, and anything you see here in red is, and it's also showing the rates for that specific unit. So not only is it showing the individual availability for that unit I've fallen in love with, it's also showing me the rates for that particular unit on those particular dates. So now I can come in here and I can make my arrival and departure selection. And now what happens when I click book now is I bypass the step where you show me every other room that's available between the 14th and 16th of November, and you're taking me to the final step of the booking engine where I'm entering in my billing and contact information because I've already navigated through your website. I've looked at all your lodging options. I've fallen in love with room 10, and now I'm ready to give you my money, okay? So if you notice in a guest experience entering from an individual unit calendar, once I've picked my dates, I'm getting dumped in to give me my give you my credit card right now, and let's call this a day, let's book that sale, and let's move on, right? So for those of you out there that return by individual units, it's very, very important that on your website, you have the ability to show your rooms on a rooms detail page that talks all about that room, that specific room, and the amenities of that specific rooms, and displays the pictures of that specific room, as well as the single most important part of that process, the booking engine, because this is what is converting those lookers into actual bookers, right? So in looking at some different marketing clients over the years, off the top of my head, I've seen conversion rates when individual calendars have been implemented go up well over 10 to 15% in various different cases. In some individual cases, I've seen it increase 50% when individual unit calendars have been put on individual room detail pages. So again, for those of you not taking advantage of this particular calendar, please do so. You can reach out to the support team directly, and you can have them help you out with getting those calendars on your website, okay? Guys, so that concludes today and all the items that I wanted to cover. So again, we talked about moving widgets on the dashboard and closing them down or moving them around. We've talked about how to go into a reservation and add an additional unit, as well as move a unit, whether you're clicking and dragging from the occupancy map on things you can see, or if you need to move it well into the future, you can click on the reservation and come into this move button. We've also talked about a rebooking feature, both from the dashboard as well as the occupancy map, to take advantage of rebooking and carrying over portions of that existing reservation for the future. And then lastly, we've talked about individual unit calendars on websites, providing a better guest experience for those booking online for those property that are utilizing individual unit calendars. So again, guys, any feedback, please reach out to me. If you haven't and are interested, please sign up for our user forums, and then be on the lookout for our next release, which is the auto merging of booking engine guests. So thank you so much for your time. I hope you've gotten good value out of this. If you're just tuning back in because you got interrupted with your normal operations, we go ahead and we record these sessions and we post them on our website. So be on a lookout for an email about that, or reach out to me if you don't see that. So again, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.